So this shiur is dedicated to רפואה שלמה של אלגריה בת מרים, מיכאל בן האישה, ירדנה בת אסתר, אסנת בת התרצה, מרקוש חיה, יוסף דוד בן מיכל. Anybody else want to add אליהו בן אסתר. וכל חולי עם ישראל, בעזרת השם, השם give them רפואה שלמה, רפואת הנפש ורפואת הגוף. It is also dedicated לעילוי נשמת שמואל בן ג'קלין יעל ומרגלית בת אסתר. So usually I teach Tanya, and I decided to talk about Bitachon because first of all, we're just going through a lot, especially in Israel with everything that's going on, and the terrorism and anti-Semitism is on the rise, and we're just like, how do we deal with all of this, and how do we trust that, you know, what we're doing is the right thing, and how do we get to that point where we're like unconditionally in love with Hashem and we trust every single thing that he does. I think that's one of the hardest things that we can ever accomplish as human beings, just because we are so limited in our capacities and our abilities to do things. And I was like, okay, we have to talk about Bitachon. Usually when I pick the subject of every week, it's based on things that I go through. And I think this year was probably one of the hardest years I've ever had, probably the hardest, just because a lot of things going on and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I really need to learn really how to incorporate Bitachon. And so I'm learning just as much as you are. Whatever I teach, I'm also learning. So if you have any questions about Bitachon and I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm not a Rabbanit. I did not go through the training, but I'm going to share, you know, really beautiful things about Bitachon and kind of how we can get there. So if you don't understand anything, or if you don't understand a certain concept, you can, you know, always pause me and I can kind of go into it, because it kind of gets like really deep into it. But hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I had, as much as I enjoyed preparing it. So there's a beautiful story of a famous rabbi called Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He was one of the biggest tzaddikim that ever existed. And he was a Talmid Torah who, in the times when he was a big Talmid Chacham, there wasn't the state that was, you know, paying him for his parnasa. Nowadays, you know, we have the yeshiva boys when they're studying in yeshiva, men with children and families, they get paid by the state. And during that time, there was no such thing. So most Talmidei yeshiva, most big scholars, what they were doing, they were studying Torah all day and they weren't getting paid. So they were very, very, very poor at the time. And so one day his wife knocks at the neighbor's door and she asks for a loaf of bread, you know, to borrow a loaf of bread, because they really had nothing to eat. They were that poor, to that point where they had nothing, and they had to ask to borrow, not even to buy from someone, but to borrow a loaf of bread. So she borrows a loaf of bread and she's walking back to the house and she puts the 2 loaves of bread on the table in front of her husband. And the loaves, she notices, are wet. They got wet somehow. And so her husband, the rabbi, looks up and he sees that she's crying. She's really, really crying. And he says, look, even a loaf of bread on the table I can't bring you. We have to borrow it from a neighbor. So while this is happening, by the way, the neighbor that gave them the 2 loaves of bread was wondering, you know, who is this woman that's asking me for a loaf of bread? I want to know, you know, who she's bringing it to. So he followed her and he's looking at the window and watching what's happening. And the rabbi looks at her and he says, if it got to the point where you're crying, that means I have to leave my limud Torah and I have to go out there and get parnasa. And why am I saying that? Because it always says, Ivdu et Hashem besimcha. That's one of the most important points in the Torah. It means that we have to worship Hashem first with love and with happiness. And then we worry about all the other things. And so when he saw that his wife was crying, he was like, okay, I have to stop everything. First of all, for Shalom Bayit, because Shalom Bayit comes first, of course. And 2, because she was crying and there was sadness in the home. And what happens when there's sadness in the home? The Shekhinah, the divine providence, leaves. It takes a distance a little bit. So he said, okay, I have to go and get parnasa. So the neighbor is watching this and he says, what is the rabbi going to do? He's been studying Torah his whole life. What is he going to do now? Work at the shuk? What is he going to do? He's going to be a businessman. He's going to work in high-tech. Where is he going to go? So he's really, really curious about this. So he follows the rabbi. The rabbi walks out of his house. He takes 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. By the 4th step, he finds a giant gold coin. It was called a Napoleon coin back then. And a Napoleon coin at the time was able to feed you for a full 6 months. So it was a very expensive coin. And he picks it up from the floor and he notices that his neighbor followed him. And so he was a very wise man. And he turns around and looks at him and he tells him in Hebrew, "Ma la'asot, tzarich parnasa." So it's funny because he says, what can we do? We have to get parnasa. So he was like, what do you mean? He just walked 4 steps from his house and he got like a golden coin. How is that even possible? The neighbor understood that somebody who has such a bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the point where he sits and studies all day without even wondering where his parnasa is going to come from, at one point he's going to get it and he won't need to go very far. So the story is beautiful and I love this story, but it leads us and it begs the question, do we really have to work to get our parnasa? Do we have to do ishtadlut in this world? Do we have to make an effort, or is everything really from Hashem? Where is the thin line between those two? Where is the balance? Where can we find that? We saw that the rabbi had so much bitachon HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he was sitting at home and the parnasa literally came to him. He did his ishtadlut, but it wasn't much of an ishtadlut. He literally walked out of his house and he saw a golden coin on the floor. So where is the ishtadlut in all of this? And how much do we have to believe in Hashem and how much do we have to do ishtadlut, right? We have all those questions that are present. On one side, it says, "Leman yivarechecha Hashem Elokecha bechol maaseh yadecha asher taaseh." From one side, it says Hashem will bless you with everything that you do. You do the doing and Hashem will bless you with whatever you do, right? So basically, it requires that you have to do in order for Hashem to bless it, right? So that's one side. And on the other hand, we know that from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah, what do we say? Gmar Chatima Tova, right? Why do we say Gmar Chatima Tova? Because Hashem is sealing the deal for the entire year. There's nothing you could do, that's it. He's sealing the deal. So what happens in Shemaim during Rosh Hashanah? He gets a stack of names. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets a stack of names. Let's say Shoshana Bat Esther. Okay, she's going to get $3 million this year, $3 million. And this person is going to get $2 million. This person is not even going to get a penny, right? So if that's the case, then what's the point of working, right? If Hashem decided that Shoshana will not have a cent this year, then what's the point of her even working? Because at the end of the year, she's going to not reach not even 1 cent or 1 penny or whatever it is. There's no point of her working. Hashem already decided what her faith is going to be. There's also a big misconception, and we can associate this, that religious people, they're lazy. That's what the people in the state of Israel, you'll say, Zama Hasidim lo avdim, because they're lazy. It's actually not true. They're just very realistic because they believe in Bitachon and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and they say, hold on, if in Rosh Hashanah Hashem decides that I don't make a penny, what's the point of working? If Hashem decides that I'm going to make 3 million this year, what's the point of working? So at the end of the day, they're realistic in the sense that I'm just going to study Torah, and as the year develops, I'll get my parnasa, whatever it is that Hashem, sealed during Rosh Hashanah. If Hashem determined I'll have X amount of money, is there a need to work, right? And if he determined that I'll have no money at the end of the year, is there still a need to work, right? So it doesn't make sense. So what do most people respond? Yeah, but that's way too extreme. You obviously need to make an effort. You can't just expect to sit at home waiting for Hashem to give you parnasa, right? Most people would say that's way too extreme. You can't, it doesn't make sense. If Hashem decided something for us, where is the concept of ishtadlut here? Who are we cheating when we're going to work and we also believe in Hashem? So what's the right thing to do? What is the role of ishtadlut? And if the effort does work, right, then clearly parnasa is not from Shamayim. It's from what we do. So how does it make sense? It's completely conflicting. It's almost like someone goes swimming and they're learning how to swim and they're excellent swimmers and they're holding on to something every time they go in the pool. So you're like, well, what are you doing, right? And so somebody's going to go and ask them, hey, but didn't you start swimming already? You had a teacher, everything. I saw you were swimming great. Actually, I'm an excellent swimmer, but I'm just holding on just like for the safety of it, So it doesn't make sense. He's an excellent swimmer, but he's still holding on to safety. You believe and trust that everything comes from Hashem. If you trust that every single thing comes from Shamayim, including health, then why go to a doctor, right? We say, okay, we want to pray right now. We said, etc., etc. So we believe in prayer, we believe in all that. But if Hashem decided that person's faith, then is there a point in doing our ishtalut? Is there a point of going to the doctor if we already know, what the fate is going to be? In our prayers, we say, Ki ani Hashem rofecha, because I am Hashem, your doctor, your healer. So from one side, we know everything comes from Hashem. And on another angle, we're not going to sit at home waiting for something. So we go out to work and we go to the doctor when we don't feel good because we think that's the right thing to do, right? Normally. On the other hand, it says, and this is a famous quote, "Uvezeat apecha tochal lechem," right? With the sweat of your brows, you will eat your bread. So there's something called stira in the Torah. And when we say stira, it means like a contradiction, kind of like a machloket. Because we have even pasukim, Ken Hashem ofecha, uvezeat apecha tochal lechem. They're completely conflicting points, because Ken Hashem ofecha, I am your healer. But then it says, you also have to make your bread and go out there and make an effort. So what are we doing here? Like Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld in the story we started with. Sorry, I think I missed something here. Oh, yes. If we need Hashem's blessing to get parnasa, okay? Because we say also, when somebody opens a business, they have birkata esek, right? They put that on their door. They're very, excited about having Hashem's blessing, but they also have to have their, startup. They have to have their business, right? They have to put that effort in there. And so it also asks the question, how come the righteous people actually sit and learn all day and they get their parnasa? So how does that make sense? Because we're also doing ishalut, we also believe in Hashem, but there's the righteous people that sit there and study Torah all day and they still get their parnasa. So that's another question that we're going to bring into the light. So let's try and understand first the difference between bitachon and emunah. Does anybody know the difference? What is the difference between bitachon and emunah? You guys can answer on video too. Yeah. Okay. Faith versus trust. Okay. Okay. So it's very interesting. And this is according to the Torah and according to commentators when we're talking about emunah and bitachon. They say the definition of bitachon is the execution of emunah. Emunah is the thought, and bitachon is the thought put into action. So you can say all day, Hashem is one, Hashem controls everything, but when it comes to the challenges, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Then you're not putting your emunah into action, right? You're freaking out, going into panic attacks. And so you're not really executing what you have in your thoughts. So know again also that not every person that has emunah has bitachon, but every person that has bitachon has emunah. Bitachon is the execution of emunah. So automatically, if somebody has bitachon, they have emunah. So a perfect example, and this is a book that I'm in love with that everyone has to read. I have to show it in here, but it's by Rav Avigdor Miller on emunah and bitachon. It's an incredible book, and I'm gonna, share some of the things that he mentioned here. A perfect example of putting your emunah into action is this. He says, true knowledge, what we're talking about bitachon, is the sensory perception of a mental concept, or the concretization of an abstract information. When the mother warns the child against touching the fire and describes the pain of a burned finger, the child believes his mother. He has faith that what she's saying is right? Because the mother is protective. But when he touches the fire and he experiences the pain, even though his mother told him, don't touch the fire, he now has a new type of knowledge. It is the sensory awareness of that knowledge. So before, he possessed a mental concept that was abstract. Okay, yeah, it's painful, it's a burnt finger, but he doesn't really know what a burnt finger is. The second he burns his finger, he's like, now I understand. In the same way, and I told my mom this on Mother's Day, we had to make a speech for her. I think it was on her birthday. I said, Mom, I never knew how much you sacrificed for me until I became a mom, because the birth, the afterbirth, the hormones, this, taking care of the baby, not sleeping. I was like, I can't believe she went through that. And even more, because it's years and years of worrying and making sure you're okay and making sure you're fed and making sure you have a roof under your head. You don't know what a parent is and what that parent gave for you until you're a mother. And people could say, yeah, but I understand. I really get it. No, you don't. You have to be a mother to understand. In the same way that everybody that has a challenge or somebody is sick or whatever it is, and they're like, yeah, I understand your pain. You don't really understand unless you're in their shoes. You cannot know. And so emunah is the perception, right? It's the abstract concept. Yeah, oh, it's probably painful to burn your finger. But the second you actually burn your finger, that is bitachon. You understand the act, you have the experience of the perception. Does that make sense? The Chazon Ish has a small book that's also called Emunah and Bitachon. And he says in the chapter, Bitachon is the experiential knowledge, experiencing it yourself, that there is no coincidence in the world, and therefore the fear does not take over a person because he doesn't know the future, right? So somebody who's always scared of the future, right? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, if you believe that Hashem is really here and you experience Hashem in your everyday life, then there is no fear, because you're like, Hashem is with me. It doesn't matter. That is the real bitachon. It's the sensory perception. You know that he's here and you've experienced him in your life. It's not about saying, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to be all right. You know, Hashem's protecting us. It's also understanding that even if it's not good news, Hashem is with us. And in the end, there's going to be ultimate good. So now he talks about the Chazon Ish talks about people like Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, which we mentioned in the story, and their level of bitachon. And this is what he says, because his level of bitachon was another level. He knew that the second he's going to leave the door, he's going to find something on the floor and it's going to be his parnasah for 6 months. He wasn't even thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do next? It wasn't even on his mind. He was just focusing on studying Torah all day. It's another level of bitachon. So the Chazon Ish says, when someone has such a high level of bitachon, a divine essence encompasses him and reveals to him that Hashem will help him. So this is very, extremely rare. I don't even know if it exists in this generation. But when you get to a point of bitachon where it's you have that experiential knowledge, right? The sensory perception, you get to this ruach hakodesh that envelops you and tells you Hashem is with you. It's not even, there's no doubt in your mind. The uncertainty is not even there. It's Hashem is here. It's almost like a knowing feeling. David HaMelech in Tehillim Chav Zayin, it's my favorite Tehillim, he says, Im tachaneh alai machaneh lo ira libi, im takum alai milchama bezot ani boteach. Im tachaneh alai machaneh, if you put a challenge or a hardship upon me, lo ira libi, my heart will not fear. Im takum alai milchama, if a war comes upon me, bezot ani boteach, in that I trust. His bitachon was so high that he says, it doesn't matter what challenge that you give me, I trust in you. Now, don't forget, David HaMelech went through the worst sufferings of all times. He went through, like, you can't even imagine, everything that someone's going through today, probably David HaMelech went through. And why did he do Tehillim? And why do we read Tehillim? It's because he has a Tehillim for every single hardship you can imagine. Somebody sinking, his boat is sinking, you have a Tehillim for that. Finding something that you lost, you have a Tehillim for that. You have from the smallest to the biggest challenges David HaMelech went through. And this is why they say he had so much bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he says, my heart will not fear. He knows, and he has the Ruach HaKodesh that Hashem is with him. So he says, Rav Chaim, the one in the story, he had the same amount of confidence that already the Ruach HaKodesh enveloped him and he knew that he was going to have the parnasah. Rabbi Avraham, the son of the Rambam, explained that there are 3 different types of people with their relationship to Hashem in terms of bitachon. Now listen to this, it's so interesting. There's 3 levels, 3 different types. I don't want to say levels because it's not like highest to lowest, they're just different. So one is the bitachon of the prophets that are close to the Shekhinah and their disciples or the students. So the Ben Ish Chai, the Rav Yosef Chaim, all of those Rabbanim that we speak about, David HaMelech, all of those big prophets and tzaddikim had this type of bitachon where it came from relying on miracles that contradict nature and the wonders that depend on them. Okay, so they always relied on miracles to happen day to day, and they weren't even shocked. It was just normal for them. And I'm going to give an example in a second. Such a straight and whole confidence can be caused by Ruach HaKodesh, like we mentioned, or a confidence that comes from the revelation of Hashem to a prophet. So the way Hashem revealed himself to a prophet, in the same way, the person that had such a high level of bitachon, that's how he felt. In the same way that the prophet saw the future and he saw Hashem, that's how much another tzaddik would be able to have that bitachon and have that ruach hakodesh inside him. But he says even prophets who achieved this kind of bitachon, it didn't happen to all prophets, and it happened very temporarily, because this type of bitachon is very, very hard to reach and very, very hard to just have all the time, right? It happens very temporarily. So this is one level. The second level we have is the exact opposite. The bitachon of the heretics. Is that how you say it? Heretics? Okay. The ones who go against God. What are the heretics so certain about, and they have no doubt in their mind? What do they have the most emunah and bitachon in? Themselves. Kochi ve'otzem yadi, right? My strength and my hands gave me everything that I have today. They don't even mention Hashem in their life. Hashem doesn't even exist for them. So what do they believe in? Kochi ve'otzem yadi, my own willpower, right? My own willpower, my own strength, my own actions. Everything that I did from the day I was born till now is either a matter of chance or because I did it myself, right? This means that they put everything to chance. There is no coincidence, and there's no sense to trust in the Creator, because when we don't make room for Hashem in our lives, Hashem doesn't exist for us, right? It's as if He's not there. The second you put Hashem in your life, then you start seeing miracles. So this type of bitachon, kochi ve'otzem yadi, is for people who go against God. That is a bitachon, but it's the exact opposite of the first level. Almost. In this type, there are also divided into two categories. There's open heresy, where we know, okay, I don't believe in God. This is all BS. I'm going to do whatever I'm doing. Everything is chance. And then there's closed heresy. Closed heresy, someone says, Baruch Hashem, Toda La'el, Hashem is great. And then the second something happens to him, he doesn't believe in God anymore, and he gets upset and doesn't pray and doesn't care, right? That's closed heresy. It's not a real believer in God, right? So he still has bitachon in himself, but he doesn't really show it. He still says, Baruch Hashem, everything is good, like as if he believes in God, but really he doesn't. The third type of emunah, of bitachon, is the one that most religious people tend to have and should have, because it says it should be embedded in a person's faith and clear in his heart. This is the type of bitachon that we all need to have. They believe that the natural causes and ordinary means are in the hands of Hashem, a private type of hashgacha that is tailored to every person in every situation. It is a bitachon that allows Hashem to work in the framework of nature, but also above nature, meaning that we can see open miracles, even though it won't happen very frequently, but we allow Hashem to work in nature, and also we allow him to work with open miracles and above nature, right? So we have the combination of both. In the first type of bitachon, which we said that it's only for the big tzaddikim, they saw open miracles every day. Why? Because nature and Hashem were together. And so for them, whatever miracle they saw, and somebody else would have been like, oh my God, how's this happening? How's this person, walking on water? To them, they were like, what do you mean? Like they saw through it already. So that was another high level of bitachon. Our level of bitachon is that we see nature and we see, everything that's materialistic, but we can also bring divinity to it. We can also bring religion, and we can also bring holiness to it. An example of working within the framework of nature is, for example, if God forbid somebody is sick and they go to the doctor and the doctor says, listen, it's bad news. It's good news. No, sorry. They're like, we're going to do a test and, we'll make sure everything is okay. And then you pray to Hashem, and then you get good results, right? So Hashem works in the framework of nature. You didn't really do a miracle here, right? You prayed and then everything was okay. But if the doctor had told you that day that it was bad news, and they were like, sorry, there's nothing we could do, and you pray and you pray and you pray and you come back, and then they don't see anything in the scan or anything in the results, and they don't understand what's happening, that's an open miracle. And that's Hashem working above nature. Okay. And now we see this all the time. It's unbelievable. But why? Because that person probably has so much bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or prayed so much at 100%. We had that. We were listening to Sheila yesterday, and she was talking about praying at 100%, to the point where he saw that nature and Hashem are together. And so he was able to see Yeshuat, right? Miracles and Hashem really working against the grain, so to speak, or against nature. So we can give credit to the natural causes, but we know in our heart that everything comes from Hashem. We can go to work, we're making money, but we know that Hashem really is bringing us the money at the end of the day, right? He's bringing us the parnasa. So we're still doing our ishtadlut, but we know that Hashem is behind all the good that we have, right? And also all the bad. So we said we have three groups of people: those who simply believe in the miracles and they see the miracles every single day, which are the biggest tzaddikim that had the highest level of bitachon. And then we have those who are heretics that believe in themselves, either openly or in a closed way of heretic. And then you have the third group, which is a balance of believing in nature and the divine providence that exists in nature. Oh my God, this is my favorite part. Okay, I get so excited. So going back to the question, where is balance of effort versus bitachon? When we actually need to work on our parnasa, which I mentioned in the beginning, ishtadlut is really, there's somebody, the difference is somebody sitting at home and waiting for parnasa, that's, not making an effort and waiting for Hashem to give you, versus somebody who believes in Hashem but still goes out there, and does his ishtadlut, right? In order to understand if we really do need to work and is our faith really sealed on Rosh Hashanah, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. What was the very beginning of the Torah? Okay, but what was the beginning of man? Adam and Chava. So when Adam ate from the tree of knowledge, what happened? Hashem was very angry with him, but what did he punish him with? What was the punishment of Adam? Having to work for his bread, right? Now it's interesting. Why is it that right after Adam sinned, he was given the punishment specifically of work and effort? It could have been other punishments, like you're not going to have ice cream, you're not going to have desserts ever. No, he gave him work and effort. Why that specific punishment? The snake, for example, he took away his legs and he said it's going to be harder for you to navigate, right? That was the punishment of the snake. And there was a few other punishments, but specifically for Adam, the punishment of Chava, for example, was birth. But for Adam, it was you're going to work hard for your bread, right? We know that the way Hashem works is midah keneged midah. What is midah keneged midah? Does anyone know? Measure for measure, right? So a perfect example, and I don't know if you know this, but when you treat other people with chesed, Hashem does chesed with you. And it's a known thing, it says it in the Torah, that the midah of the deen, which is judgment against chesed, will never go against you. You can never, God forbid, get any bad decree or anything against you coming from the heavens if you navigate your life with the midah of chesed, because the midah, it's always midah keneged midah. And so if you have the midah of chesed, or you have, for example, the midah of not judging others and giving others the benefit of the doubt, you will never be able to be decreed with something that is against you, or the deen up in Shemaim. Why? Because if you don't judge others and you judge others favorably, Hashem is going to judge you favorably. It's a known thing, right? Hashem navigates everybody in that way. Midah keneged midah. The Mekubalim say the punishment for Adam was to work for his bread, but there has to be a connection, because if everything is midah keneged midah, so how does it make sense? What was Adam's midah that worked against him when he said, we were going to have to work for your bread? You're going to have to support your family by working in the fields or by working hard, right? What was the midah that we're trying to get here? The Mekubalim say when Adam was in Gan Eden, where was Gan Eden really? Does anybody know? When Adam was in Gan Eden, where was Gan Eden really? In the Maldives, in the Caribbean, like where is Gan Eden? No. No. So the Mekubalim say that it is not a place, it is a state of mind. Okay. Guys, I'm so excited. Okay. So Gan Eden is a state in which there is no difference between nature and miracle in a person's mind. I have goosebumps. When there is no difference between nature and a miracle, a man can directly see Hashem. You're looking at Hashem in the eyes. When a person experiences godliness in a way that is beyond the natural way, that is Gan Eden, because you're directly connected to Hashem. The human being sees, feels, and experiences God. And what did we say about Bitachon? It is a sensory perception, right? You feel it. It is the experience. And so Gan Eden, in the state of mind, when you don't have that line between Hashem and miracles and nature, then you see Hashem directly. There's no difference here. And so the second that Adam sinned, what did Hashem do in order to punish him? He separated that. He made a division between nature and Hashem. And so he brought on distractions. So much to the point where a man can be born and a man can die, and in his entire lifetime, he will never see God. That was the punishment. In nature, you do not meet God. Because in nature, what is nature? Science, statistics, going to work and thinking that you're the one that's making money, giving birth and thinking it was your body that did it and not Hashem that helped you get fertile and helped the, that whole process, because that process is insanity. When you look at what happens when you're creating a baby, it is impossible that God doesn't exist. For me, at least, it's just impossible.
But it says so. It says that the man, the first thing when the thing when the baby is in his mind. Yeah, that's how it's developed.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the job of the man. Then it goes to the mother, and with all those 9 months that she's nurturing the baby and this and that. That's how it comes from, and you can feel it. It's not really the creation. It's not a creation. A creation is when God says sun, and the sun comes up, because he created by the speech.
The speech, exactly.
By speaking. The only person, the only thing that he created is the as Adam. But even the Adam, when he created the man, but then it was without the neshama until he by himself come to him and blow the thing in his mouth. And that's,
exactly.
That's why we think that that's the peace of God that we have.
Exactly.
Hashem,
exactly.
As when he says we are, his image is true. We are his image. We are peace of him.
Exactly. Exactly. 100%. And so when Adam was expelled from Gan Eden, what did that mean for him? It meant that he was not able to see Hashem anymore. And that there was distractions now. And that what happens in nature when you have to go make bread and you have to bring bread home, you have to grow crops, you have to go in the field. When he says, with the sweat of your brows, you will eat your bread, it is literally with the sweat of your brows, because you have to go out in the field and then you have to sweat and you have to get bread. It's not like the man, in the desert where Hashem just, brought it down. You have to literally now go into nature and get it. Hashem doesn't exist anymore, so to speak. And so what happens? Hashem becomes hidden and the distractions come to life. And so sometimes it is so hard to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that was the punishment that we received as human beings.
But there is only one that can still see him.
Who? Right. Of course. That was Ruach HaKodesh, of course. So the Mekubalim go even deeper. And they say that we are here to fix the sin of Adam. Right? The sin of Adam was that he ate from the tree of knowledge, but essentially the punishment was that there was the division between nature and Hashem. And so how do we fix that division? How do we fix that problem? By bringing God into nature, by bringing God into our life. There was a rabbi at a seminary who taught this exact class, because I was listening to some of the things that he was saying and I was incorporating it. And he says that there was a student that came after his seminary. And he says, Rabbi, you don't understand. I witnessed an open miracle. So the rabbi goes, no, he's in Israel. He doesn't have much patience, but So he comes to him and he says, I have a giant garden and I was planting an apple tree. And can we say vine tree or a vineyard? Vine tree where, grapes grow out of it. And he says, when the apple tree started growing, suddenly I saw an apple come out of the tree. And he says, when the vine tree came up, I started seeing grapes. So now the rabbi looks at him and he goes, security, this guy's crazy. And he's like, the student looks at him and he's in shock and he goes, are you sure you're the rabbi that said all of that in the seminary now? He said, you just spoke about miracles. And he goes, what's more of a miracle than seeing an apple come out of a tree? And what's more of a miracle seeing grapes growing out of a tree? And he was like so embarrassed. He put his head down because this man was able to see God in nature. And that is exactly what we need to do. My father, every time, it's so funny, every time we bring friends over or people over for Shabbat and they're not like so religious, he like already starts getting into the religion. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to hear the same story again. And he uses the same story. He says, look at the nature itself. When you look at nature and the animal kingdom, okay? A lion, a lioness that gives birth to their cub, okay? It's a cub, right? Or is that tiger? A cub. The cub cannot walk right away, right? It takes them time to walk and then to learn how to eat their prey and how to catch all that and et cetera, right? It takes time. And so he says, why does it take time with the cub and the lion? Because the lion can protect their children. But if you look at a deer that gives birth, or I think he said, was it a zebra? It was a specific animal that the second they give birth, their baby starts walking. The second the baby comes to the floor, they start walking and running. How does that make sense? And he goes, because that specific animal cannot protect them. So if somebody comes, they're able to run, and the mother, whatever she's trying to protect them, but really at the end of the day, she cannot. And so he says, if you cannot see God in the animal kingdom, then I have nothing to say to you. It's I love when he says that because it really makes sense. He says, everything that happens in the world, everything that you see in nature is for a purpose, right? We have an adaptive species that they can adapt in any environment, and you see how they live in each environment and how they work to survive. And you're like, there's no way that there was no creator that created every single thing here. It's incredible, exactly. And so our role is to look at that and to connect nature with Hashem and to see Hashem in nature and in everything that we do. And when I talk about nature, I'm not talking about only the animal kingdom, but I'm talking about our day-to-day lives. When we wake up in the morning, do you know how much it takes to just start breathing and to walk and it just takes billions of neurons to make one thought. It's just incredible. And so Hashem mechadesh et haolam mechadash. Every single second, Hashem is always renewing the world because we need that energy in order to survive. We need that vitality. And so the second we see that we have Hashem and we connect nature with Hashem, that is where we can start reaching that level of bitachon that all of those tzaddikim were able to have. In Parnassah, we do this by incorporating bitachon and ishtadlut. So the Baal Shem Tov writes about bitachon, and he says, when he goes out for his Parnassah in the morning, okay, he explains this is how you reach bitachon. When you go out to get your Parnassah in the morning, right? So you put your hand by the mezuzah and you say, Im en anili mili. Does anyone know what that means? If I am not for me, who will be for me? Okay, now that doesn't make sense. You're like, the Baal Shem Tov is telling me to do that. All of the tzaddikim we talk about, they'd be like, oh my God, I'm not doing it. Okay, the Baal Shem Tov said so. Like, I'll do it because it gives strength to yourself. You're saying, Im en anili mili. If I'm not for me, who will be for me? So I got to do it, Right. So that is the ishtadlut part, right? You got to go out there and make your bread. But then he says when he comes back from work, he needs to go to that same mezuzah and say, V'kshani le'atzmi ma'ani. But if I am for me, who am I? Right? And that is where we incorporate Hashem into nature, where we say, yes, I went out there and I, made my bread and I made my money and I did what I had to do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if I worked an hour or 2 hours, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides everything. And he's the one that gives me the bracha in my business. When a person leaves for work, he tells himself, I need to put effort into making money and using the tools that I have, right? Which we said is the nature aspect. And when he comes back home, when he says, if I am for myself, who am I? He is saying with full bitachon that I didn't do anything. Everything comes from Hashem. This way, we connect nature when we say in the morning, Im en ani li mili, and then we connect Hashem at night when we come back from work and we say, Im ani li mani, ukshani la'atzmi mani. Now, this sounds a little conflicting again because they're complete opposites. So you go in the morning and you're like, kochi ve'otzam yadi, if I'm not for me, who am I? Obviously, I have to go to work. Who's going to make the money here, right? And then you come back home and you're like, ukshani la'atzmi mani. So then, Hashem, you're everything. So it's still conflicting here. So what is the solution? When is a person lying to himself? In the morning or at night? Someone who doesn't have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when is it going to be harder for him to kiss the mezuzah and to say that? It's going to be harder for him at night because that is when you recognize that Hashem is in charge of everything. When is it going to be easiest for him? In the morning. Right? But at night, it's going to be very hard for him to hold the mezuzah and say, when I am for me, who am I? Because Hashem really does everything. And those people who are the tzaddikim are going to have a really hard time touching the mezuzah in the morning and saying, it's very hard for them. So we need to look at ourselves and decide, who are we? Are we the morning or are we the night? When we look at Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld versus the average person, we see two types of people. The type that see more of Hashem than nature, and the type that sees more nature than Hashem. The people who have immense bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they believe in ishtadlut, but they still know they're just doing it, to make the effort. But really, it's for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They know that Hashem decides everything. So which one are we supposed to be? The morning or the night? The answer is that we need to be both. In the Kaddish, there's a part where they say, let me see if I remember it. Leichud shchinta berichu. Leichud shchinta berichu is leyached, to fuse together, shchinta, et shchina, right? And so when you fuse together the shchina, what are you doing? You're connecting Hashem with nature, and you're saying that I'm doing my ishtadlut, but I still know that it is you. And the fusion that we're doing is that we need to do our ishtadlut, but we need Hashem in our lives. And that is how we have the tikkun of Adam HaRishon, because Adam HaRishon had the division. That was our punishment. And so when people say, okay, then what about those people that study all day and don't need to do ishtadlut? They actually need to, because you need to fuse both of them together in order to balance out the punishment, in order to fix the tikkun of Adam HaRishon. And so are we more comfortable saying that if I am not for me, who will be, believing in our own strengths and nature? Or are we more comfortable saying, if I'm for myself, who am I? We have to ask ourselves that question. Do we believe more in the doctor when we go to the doctor and we're like, okay, this person's going to heal me? Or do we believe in Hashem and we say, before we go to the doctor's office, Hashem, please give the doctor the right wisdom and knowledge and the tools to heal me? Because you believe that you have to go to the doctor, but you believe that Hashem is giving him the wisdom and he's the right doctor that you're going to, that is going to heal you. Because people go from doctor to doctor to doctor and they're still not healed. Why? Because they're missing the piece. They have to connect the nature with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now there's another question, so many questions. Then why do all the big tzaddikim, they don't need to make an effort to get parnasah? Because it's true. There are tzaddikim that do not need to do anything and they will still get the parnasah. It's because they've already fixed their tikkun of Adam HaRishon. Exactly. They already see the miracles in present day. They don't need to make the connection between nature and HaKadosh Baruch Hu because they've already accomplished the balance. They've already accomplished the fusion. And I'm going to give you an example of a very famous rabbi, and I don't remember his name, but it's the daughter of a famous rabbi. She had so much bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. She was such a special woman. She was about 15 years old. She's lighting the candles for Shabbat. And she realized that instead of pouring olive oil, she poured vinegar. And right before Shabbat, she lights the candles for Shabbat, and she sees that the candles are lighting. Now, vinegar cannot hold fire. It's impossible, right? It goes against nature. That's witnessing an open miracle. she runs to her father, which was a very big, famous rabbi, and she goes, Abba, oh my gosh, you don't understand. I put vinegar instead of olive oil, but the light is still adaim daluk. It's still lit. And why was she crying though? Not because she witnessed an open miracle, but they say that when you witness an open miracle, machuk as-zchuyot shelachem, it means that some of your zchuyot are taken away because you've seen Hashem. And so the second she saw that, she almost wanted to look away so that her zchuyot aren't taken away, eliminated from her. And her dad said, Beiti, like my daughter, he says, don't worry, we've already accomplished the balance of Hashem and nature. And so our zchuyot are never going to be eliminated from us. And so the point is that the bitachon that each and every one of us needs to work on is it depends on the type of bitachon that you have. Are you the morning or the night, right? You have to believe in your ishtadlut, but you also have to believe that whatever you do also comes from Hashem. You have to fuse them together into everything that you do. After my second pregnancy, I had like weird neurological symptoms, like pins and needles, like tingling everywhere. And it was like happening for like a few weeks, and I was walking like wobbly. And when it stopped, I can't even explain to you how much I appreciated having balance and being able to walk properly and being able to feel my arms and not have the tingling and numbness and all of those things. But at the end of the day, when I went to the doctor, I was like, it doesn't matter what doctor I go to, because at the end of the day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides for me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can go to the biggest expert, but if I'm not praying enough for Hashem, if I don't believe that Hashem is the one that's going to decide for me if I'm going to be healed or not, based on how much prayer I have, how much bitachon I have in him, and how much I put him in my life, that doctor won't be able to do anything for me. So you have to ask yourself, are we able to see Hashem when we wake up in the morning, when we're able to breathe? Are we able to see Hashem when we're walking, using our hands, running, playing with our kids, working out, making food for our kids, feeding our kids, putting them to sleep, when we're waking up in the morning? Whatever it is that you're going through during the day, even the simplest things, Hashem is putting vitality into that every single day. A religious person who believes that his parnasah truly comes from Hashem still needs to work in order to connect nature and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that is why we're here. We are here to correct Adam HaRishon. And so even the biggest tzaddikim, they need to do their ishtadlut, because that is how we fuse and we create the bitachon. I think that's about it. Yeah, I was so excited for this one. It was interesting. Does anybody have any questions or?
The way we struggle in life, it is because of Adam. Because when he created Adam and Eve, so we didn't have to work or to do anything. They were
Yeah.
independent. That's the punishment that we got from him.
Exactly.
To work and to some people got very hard, and to struggle, some people will struggle.
Right.
Comes from him.
Exactly. Unfortunately, but that's the point. The point. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah, you liked it?